I still remember the sound the fork made when it hit the floor. Sharp, metallic, final. It was the sound of something breaking inside me. My name is Clara. I'm 34 years old, and that night was supposed to be my anniversary, my 10th year of marriage to Richard. We'd booked a private table at Le Verre, the kind of restaurant where the candles never flicker and the air smells like truffles and expensive lies. The lights glowed warm gold across the crystal glasses. Laughter echoed softly between tables. Richard had planned everything: the roses, the champagne, the small gathering of our closest friends. I remember thinking how perfect he looked that night, his tie crisp, his smile effortless, that easy confidence that always drew people to him like moths. He leaned close to me and whispered, "You look breathtaking, darling. Everyone's going to be jealous." I smiled a little shyly and touched his hand. 10 years, Richard. Can you believe it? He grinned. Oh, I can. And I plan to make the next 10 even better. I didn't know then what those words really meant. The waiter poured the wine, deep red, glinting under the candles. Around us, conversation flowed, our friends talking about vacations, work, children. I caught snippets of laughter, but my attention was always on Richard. He had that magnetic way of commanding the room. Every word out of his mouth seemed perfectly timed, perfectly charming. Then came the moment. He stood up, slow and deliberate, his chair scraping softly against the polished floor. He lifted his glass and the chatter faded. The entire table turned toward him. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "To love, to patience, and to the woman who truly understands me." There was a ripple of polite laughter. Someone said, "Hear, hear," but then, he added it, the words that froze time. "To my second wife," he said, smiling faintly, "the woman who truly understands me." My hand froze halfway to my mouth. The laughter stopped. Someone coughed. A fork clattered onto a plate. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. Maybe he was making a joke, a strange, unfunny one. But then I saw his face, that charming, confident smile still resting casually on his lips. The same lips that had kissed me goodbye that morning. "Richard," I whispered, my throat tight. "What did you just say?" He looked at me, eyes gleaming with a kind of private amusement. "You heard me." A low murmur rippled through the table. I could hear whispers. "Second wife? Is he serious? What's going on?" I turned to him, my voice shaking. "Richard, I don't understand." What are you talking about?" Before he could answer, I noticed movement at the far end of the table. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, with soft brown curls and nervous eyes, lowered her gaze to her plate. Her cheeks flushed crimson. My stomach dropped. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice barely a breath. Richard swirled the wine in his glass and gave a small, knowing smile. "Clara, please. Not here. Not here?" I laughed, a small broken sound that didn't even feel like my own voice. "You just called someone else your wife, Richard. Where exactly should we talk about it? At dessert?" The guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone tried to change the subject, but the silence swallowed everything. Even the waiter, frozen beside the wine bucket, didn't dare move. "Richard," I said again, louder this time, my hands trembling. "Who is she?" The young woman finally looked up. Her eyes met mine for a split second, full of guilt, fear, something like apology, before darting away. Richard sighed, like a man inconvenienced by emotion. "You're making a scene," he murmured. I slammed my hand on the table. The glasses rattled. "A scene? You've just humiliated me in front of everyone we know." His smile never faltered. "I didn't humiliate you, Clara. You're overreacting." Overreacting? My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. "You called another woman your wife." He leaned in slightly, voice low, intimate, that same voice he used when trying to calm me after a fight. "You'll understand soon enough. Let's just enjoy the evening, okay? For old time's sake, for old time's sake." The words echoed in my mind, twisted, mocking. Someone touched my arm, maybe Anna, one of my friends, whispering, "Clara, maybe we should go outside, take a minute." But I shook her off. My eyes were locked on Richard. "Who is she?" I said again, slower this time, each word trembling with rage. "Say it!" He finally set his glass down. The faint clink felt like a gunshot in the silence. "Her name is Lila," he said quietly. "She works with me, and yes, we're together, officially." The room tilted. The sound of my heartbeat drowned everything else. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" And that poor waiter, he just stood there, eyes darting between us, not sure whether to pour or disappear. I remember gripping the edge of the table so hard my nails dug into the wood. "You're joking," I said. This is some sick joke." But Richard just stared at me, expression soft, almost pitying. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way," he said. "But maybe it's for the best. You deserve honesty." Honesty, that word. After 10 years of lies. I felt my chest tighten, a scream rising in my throat that I couldn't release. The guests' faces blurred. Pity, discomfort, curiosity, all of it pressed in on me like a fog. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching across the marble. "You brought her here, to our anniversary dinner?" He shrugged, still maddeningly calm. "She wanted to celebrate too." I stared at him, my voice cracking. "Celebrate what?" "My replacement?" He said nothing, just sipped his wine, unbothered. Something in me broke then. I felt heat rush through me, shame, rage, disbelief, all tangled together. I wanted to throw the wine in his face. I wanted to scream until the walls cracked. But instead I just stood there trembling, my voice barely a whisper. "How long?" He didn't even hesitate. "About a year. While I'd been planning our anniversary, while I'd been buying him gifts, cooking his favorite meals, trusting every word out of his mouth." I looked around the table, our friends pretending not to watch, the waiter frozen mid-step, Lila staring down at her untouched food, and then I said it, the words that ended everything. "What did you just say?" He met my eyes, utterly cold. "You heard me." The candles flickered, the air went still. And somewhere in the back of my mind, something whispered. That was the night my marriage and my sanity split in half. When I look back now, it's strange how ordinary everything seemed. How beautiful. How easily lies can blend into everyday life until they feel like truth. Before that night, before the toast, before the glass in his hand shattered my world, Richard and I had what everyone else called the perfect marriage. Mornings were my favorite part of our day. The smell of coffee drifting through the kitchen, sunlight crawling across the marble counters, and the low hum of our old espresso machine sputtering to life. Richard always woke before me. I'd find him sitting at the kitchen island, sleeves rolled up, reading emails on his laptop while absently stirring sugar into his cup. He'd look up, smile that warm smile, and say, "Good morning." Sleepyhead. I'd tease him. "You know, one day I'm going to change the Wi-Fi password so you can't check work before breakfast." He'd laugh, soft, charming. "You'd never survive without me, remember?" And back then, I believed him. Completely. I ran a small interior design studio in the city, a dream I'd built from nothing. I loved color, light, the way a space could change how someone felt. But when Richard decided to start his own firm, he convinced me to leave my job at the big agency to help him. Why build someone else's dream when you can build ours? He said one night, holding my hand across the dining table. His eyes were steady, full of that quiet intensity that always made me feel like the world shrank to just us two. So I did it. I walked away from my secure salary, my clients, my own projects, and poured myself into his company. I designed the office space, created the brand, handled clients, even made coffee runs for his team. And every time someone praised the office's design, he'd smile proudly and say, "All thanks to my wife. She's my secret weapon." Those words made me glow. I felt seen, valued. I didn't realize that sometimes praise can be a leash, a way to make you stay exactly where they want you. Our evenings were warm, quiet, predictable. We'd pour wine, talk about his meetings, our travel plans, the house we were renovating, the dream home we'd finally bought after years of saving. It was a beautiful mess of dust and paint and promises. I still remember the scent of fresh plaster and sawdust mixed with the cinnamon candles I burned to make it feel like a home. We'd argue about the smallest things, like what shade of white to paint the walls. He liked cold, clean white. I preferred cream, soft, lived in. Trust me, he'd say with that teasing grin. Minimalism never lies. And I'd laugh, rolling my eyes. You say that about everything. We were a team. Or so I thought. Sometimes, when he was sanding down old wood beams or tightening cabinet handles, he'd hum quietly under his breath. Little things like that, domestic, tender, made me think I'd won life's lottery. He wasn't just my husband. He was my partner, my compass, my safe place. But love has a cruel way of blinding you, wrapping you in warmth while the cold seeps in quietly beneath the door. It started small. Tiny cracks, almost invisible, late nights at the office. A new cologne he never wore before, a strange brightness in his voice whenever his phone buzzed. One night, I was sketching designs in the living room when I heard his phone vibrate on the counter. He was in the shower. I didn't mean to look. I really didn't. But the screen lit up, and I caught a glimpse of a name. Just the letter, followed by a heart. My hand hovered over it. I told myself, don't be that wife. So I didn't touch it. I left it there. When he came out, towel around his waist, I asked, keeping my tone light, "Who's Elle?" He froze for half a second, so quick that anyone else might have missed it. Then he smiled, all charm. "Liam, from the office. We're finalizing the contracts for the new client. Since when does Liam send you hearts?" I joked, half laughing, half listening to my own heartbeat. He walked over, kissed my forehead. "You worry too much, Clara. You're cute when you're jealous." And just like that, the conversation was over. He made it sound silly, harmless, and I let it go. That was his gift. Making every doubt sound irrational, every instinct feel like insecurity. A few weeks later, he started coming home later. He'd always have a reason. Client dinner, urgent pitch, traffic. He'd kiss my cheek when he walked in, smelling faintly of whiskey and expensive perfume that wasn't mine. Once, while folding laundry, I found a long strand of hair clinging to his jacket, lighter than mine, golden brown shimmering under the light. I remember holding it up, staring at it, my chest tight. He laughed when I showed him. "You think I'm cheating because of a hair? Clara, come on. Half the women at the office have that color." Then he took the hair, blew it off his palm like a joke, and kissed me until I couldn't think straight. He had a way of kissing that erased logic, of speaking in circles until I doubted what I'd seen. I told myself we were just tired, busy. That marriage had seasons. I didn't want to believe the man I loved could ever hurt me. We had moments, real, beautiful moments, that made the doubts disappear. Movie nights, slow dancing in the kitchen, spontaneous road trips where he'd play our song and squeeze my hand at red lights. There was this one evening, I can still see it perfectly, when we were painting the living room. The floor was covered in plastic, our clothes splattered with paint. He suddenly grabbed my hand, dipped it in white paint, and pressed it against the wall. "There," he said. "Now our home has your touch on it forever." I laughed and flicked paint at him. "You're ridiculous." He caught me by the waist, spinning me around until I couldn't stop laughing. If anyone had looked in through the window that night, they'd have sworn they were watching a love story. And maybe they were, just not the kind that ends happily, because even in that laughter, there were shadows. Moments when I'd catch him staring at nothing, lost in thought. Times he'd pull away too quickly when I hugged him from behind. Nights when he'd sleep facing the other side of the bed, phone clutched under the pillow. Once, I woke up around 2 a.m. to the faint sound of him whispering in the hallway. I could only make out fragments. "Yeah, I'll handle it." "No, she doesn't know." Then silence. When I asked the next morning, he smiled easily. "Just work. You really should stop watching those crime shows. They're messing with your imagination." I laughed, pretended to believe him. But something inside me, something quiet and small, started to ache. Still, life went on. We finished renovating the house. I posted photos online, dream home complete. The comments poured in, people saying how lucky I was, how perfect we looked, and I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe the filtered version of our life, so I silenced the doubts. I ignored the late nights, the hushed calls, the lipstick stain I convinced myself was from me. Because when you love someone that deeply, you'll do anything to keep the illusion alive. even if it means lying to yourself. The last memory before everything fell apart was a Sunday morning. He'd just brewed coffee, and I was sitting on the porch, sketchbook in my lap. The air smelled like wet grass and roasted beans. He came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my shoulders, and whispered, "You know, I couldn't do any of this without you." I smiled, leaning into him. "You'd find a way." "No," he said softly, pressing his lips to my hair. "You're my everything, Clara. You always will be." Those words, they still haunt me, because I didn't realize that everything meant until someone else came along. If only I'd realized that while I was decorating our home, he was building a life without me. The first lie is always quiet. It doesn't scream or announce itself. It whispers, soft enough for you to doubt your own ears. After the house was finished, things between Richard and me began to shift. Nothing sudden, just tiny, invisible movements, like hairline fractures under fresh paint. At first, I blamed stress. His company was expanding. Deadlines, investors, clients, all demanding his attention. He'd come home late, loosen his tie, kiss my cheek absent-mindedly, and say, "You wouldn't believe the day I've had." I'd pour him a drink, massage his shoulders, listen as he vented about contracts and budgets. He'd always end with the same line, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Clara." Those words used to mean love. Now they started to sound like distraction, like something rehearsed. One evening I noticed a charge on our joint credit card, a high-end jewelry store downtown. I hadn't been there. When I asked, he didn't even look up from his laptop. "Oh, that? Client gift. You know how it is. Gotta keep them happy." "Jewelry?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "She's the wife of a major investor." "It's business, Clara." I tried to laugh, but something about the way he said she lodged in my throat. Later that week, I caught a faint trace of perfume on his jacket, floral, expensive, definitely not mine. When I leaned closer, he brushed past me quickly, hanging the jacket up before I could say anything. "Smells nice," I said softly, almost testing him. He looked over his shoulder. "What does?" "Your jacket," he shrugged. "Probably from the office. You know how women wear too much perfume these days." And that was it. A joke, a deflection, another brick in the wall between us. At night, I'd hear him murmuring on the phone in the study. When I'd walk in, he'd end the call too quickly. "Work," he'd say. Just work, always work. But I wasn't stupid. I'd worked beside him for years. I knew how his company ran. No client called at midnight. One night, curiosity, or maybe desperation, got the better of me. He'd fallen asleep on the couch after a few glasses of wine. I tiptoed to his briefcase, just intending to tidy up his papers. That's what I told myself, but then I saw it. A second phone, sleek, black, with no case. The kind of phone you buy when you don't want anyone to recognize it. I froze. My pulse hammered in my ears. When I picked it up, the screen lit. No lock, no password. Just a list of messages. The name at the top made my stomach twist. L. The same initial I'd seen months ago. I scrolled. Just one message was enough to make my vision blur. L. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Miss your voice. R. You'll get plenty of it soon. Promise. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I heard movement behind me. I turned. Richard was standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" His voice was calm. Too calm. I swallowed hard. "What is this, Richard? Whose phone is this?" He walked over slowly, eyes locked on mine, then plucked the phone from my hand. "That's company property. You shouldn't be snooping." "Snooping?" My voice broke. "There are messages from L. You told me that was Liam. Do you think I'm blind?" He laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that sliced through me. "God, Clara, you're paranoid." "Paranoid?" "Yes," he said, smiling just slightly. "You've been off lately. You overthink everything. You need to relax." "I'm not imagining this," I whispered. He tilted his head, that same charming tilt he used when closing deals. "Then what do you think's happening, That I'm having some wild affair behind your back? In what time, Clara? Between 12-hour meetings and client dinners?" My voice wavered, maybe between the lies. For a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Anger, maybe. But it was gone before I could name it. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You need to trust me. Otherwise, what's the point of us?" Then he leaned in and kissed my forehead, the gesture of a man comforting a child. And just like that, he walked upstairs, the phone in his hand. The silence that followed was unbearable. I stood there, staring at the empty space he left behind, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt afraid of my own husband. After that night, something inside me broke. Not cleanly, not visibly, but deep down where no one could see. I stopped asking questions. He stopped pretending to answer them, but the signs didn't stop. He changed passwords on his devices, started locking his office door. Once, I walked in unexpectedly and found him shutting his laptop so fast it nearly cracked. When I asked what was wrong, he actually snapped, for the first time. "Can't I get a moment's peace without you hovering over me?" I froze. I wasn't... "Forget it," he said, brushing past me. "You wouldn't understand." His tone chilled me. It was cold, final, like a wall slamming down between us. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the untouched dinner I'd made. I picked up my phone and called my best friend Anna. She hesitated before answering. Her voice sounded strained. "Hey, Clara, everything okay?" "I don't know," I said quietly. "Something's off with Richard." A pause. Then a nervous laugh. "Off how?" "He's hiding things." I found a second phone. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she said, "Maybe you're reading too much into it. You've always been sensitive." "Sensitive?" "Yeah, I mean, you've been under stress with the house and the studio. Maybe he's just busy." Her words felt rehearsed, careful. I knew that tone. The tone people use when they already know the truth. "Anna," I said slowly, "has he said something to you?" "No, of course not," she replied too quickly. "Look, I've got to run, okay? Call you tomorrow?" She hung up before I could respond. After that, things started changing with everyone. Our mutual friends avoided eye contact. Conversations felt forced. People whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. It was like the whole world knew something I didn't. I began keeping a journal. It started as a way to stay sane, to document what I saw, what I felt, what didn't make sense. June 4th, he came home late again. Said it was traffic. Smelled like her perfume. June 7th, found lipstick on his cuff. Lighter shade than mine. June 9th. He looked at me like he was studying a stranger. Writing it down made it real. But it also made me feel trapped, like I was building evidence against the man I still loved. One night, I heard him laughing downstairs, low and intimate, his voice soft in the dark. I thought he was on the phone, but when I went down, the room was empty. The laughter stopped. When he saw me, his expression hardened. "You're losing it," he said quietly. "Maybe you should talk to someone." I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded, because part of me believed him. Was I losing it? Was I imagining everything? The next morning, he made me coffee like nothing happened, kissed my cheek, drove off whistling, and I just stood at the window staring after his car, clutching the mug until my hands burned. That's the thing about manipulation. It doesn't hit you like a punch. It seeps in like poison, drop by drop, until you can't tell what's real anymore. For days, I tried to act normal, pretended to believe him, pretended to trust again, but every time he smiled, I saw the lie behind it. Every "I love you" sounded like a goodbye, and yet, I said nothing, because love makes you cowardly, because the truth, once spoken, can never be undone. So I told myself I'd wait, watch, gather proof, but that silence was my fatal mistake. I thought silence was my worst enemy. I was wrong. It was the laughter that followed the words that shattered everything I thought I knew about love. We're back at that dinner table, the restaurant glowing gold, the sound of soft jazz floating through the air, wine glasses catching the light like shards of memory. The anniversary banner above our table read, 10 years of forever. What a joke that turned out to be. Richard was in his element. Charming, magnetic, entertaining our friends as if the world revolved around him. His laughter was louder than mine, his stories smoother. Every now and then, he'd squeeze my hand under the table, a public display of affection that felt like reassurance. But reassurance of what? That I still mattered? That I was still part of his act? When the waiter appeared with the champagne, Richard stood up, smiling with that effortless confidence that had always made me melt. He tapped his glass, the gentle clinking slicing through the chatter. The room fell quiet. "I want to say something," he said, raising his glass high. 10 years. That's a long time. 10 years of laughter, challenges, growth. Everyone smiled. I did too. I was ready to cry, thinking this was his big romantic speech, maybe even a vow renewal. Then he paused. That pause, it was the kind of silence that stretches just long enough to make you uneasy. He glanced down the table, his eyes locking on someone. A young woman, brunette, maybe mid-20s, wearing a soft pink dress. She was sitting at the far end, cheeks flushed, eyes darting between him and her wineglass. My stomach tightened. Richard smiled, still looking at her. "Tonight, I'd like to raise my glass to the woman who truly understands me." The laughter that followed was uncertain, the kind of sound people make when they don't know if something's a joke. I froze, my smile faltering, and then came the words that hollowed me out from the inside. "To my second wife," he said, voice smooth, confident, cruelly casual. "The woman who reminds me every day what love really means." The world tilted. Someone gasped. Another whispered, "Wait, what?" My fingers went numb around the stem of my glass. I set it down too quickly. It tipped, spilling champagne across the tablecloth. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "Richard," I said softly. "What did you just say?" He turned to me, that same smirk still curving his lips. "You heard me." A ripple of whispers spread through the room like wildfire. "Second wife? Is he serious?" "What's happening?" I stood, chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Richard, what are you talking about? Is this some kind of joke?" He didn't flinch, didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, he smiled wider. "Sit down, Clara. You're making a scene." I blinked, disbelief clawing at my throat. "A scene? You just told a room full of people that you have a second wife." "Lower your voice," he said sharply, that easy charm slipping just enough to reveal steel underneath. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" My voice cracked. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." A few people at nearby tables had turned to watch. Even the waiter, frozen beside the wine bucket, didn't know whether to refill glasses or vanish. Then I saw her, the young woman at the end of the table, stand up, slowly, hesitantly. Her hands were trembling. She looked like she wanted to disappear. "Richard, maybe we shouldn't," she began, voice barely audible. He turned to her gently, placing his hand on hers. "It's fine, Sophia." They were going to find out eventually. Sophia. The name burned through me like acid. "Sophia?" I whispered. "You brought her here?" He looked back at me, expression almost bored. "You don't have to act surprised, Clara. We've been distant for a long time. You must have known." My chest heaved. "Known? Known what? That my husband has been sleeping with another woman?" Gasps, murmurs, a glass shattered somewhere behind me. I could barely breathe. My vision blurred with tears, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. I took a shaky step toward him. "Tell me the truth, Richard. How long has this been going on?" He sighed, annoyed as if I were interrupting something trivial. "A year? Maybe a little more. Does it matter?" My hands shook. "A year? While we were building our house? While you were telling me you loved me?" He nodded slowly, almost thoughtfully. "I did love you, Clara, just not in the same way anymore." The laughter that broke from my lips was sharp, brittle, almost manic. "Not in the same way? You call that love?" He leaned back slightly, voice low and deliberate. "Please stop this. You're ruining what's supposed to be a beautiful night." "Beautiful for who?" I snapped. "For you and your mistress?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Clara, I didn't mean—" "Don't," I said, cutting her off. "Don't say my name." The room had gone utterly silent now. Every eye was on us. The candlelight flickered, shadows twisting across the white tablecloth like something out of a nightmare. I turned to Richard one last time, my voice trembling but clear. "You could have told me privately. You could have ended it with dignity. But this was cruelty." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, with chilling calm, he said, "You never would have let go otherwise." And there it was. The truth. The reason behind the spectacle. He wanted to break me in front of everyone so I'd never have the strength to fight back. I felt the last thread holding me together snap. The waiter tried to step forward, muttering something like, "Ma'am, maybe," but I didn't hear the rest. My body moved on instinct. I grabbed my purse, stumbled back from the table, and ran out of the private room, past the bar, through the glass doors into the cold night air. The street outside was buzzing with life, people laughing, couples walking hand in hand. And there I was, standing on the curb in my anniversary dress, mascara streaking down my face, trying to breathe. Behind me, I heard Richard call out, "Clara, come back! Don't be dramatic." I turned once, just once, to look at him through the restaurant window. He wasn't following me. He was comforting her. That was the image that would replay in my mind for months. His hand on her back, his head tilted toward her, while I stood outside like a stranger. After a few minutes, he came out, calm, collected, like nothing had happened. He opened the car door. "Get in," he said flatly. I hesitated. "Why? So you can insult me in private now?" He sighed, his patience thinning. "Let's not do this here." "Get in the car," I did, because I didn't know what else to do. The drive home was suffocating. The hum of the engine was the only sound between us. I stared out the window, streetlights flashing across my face like flickers of old memories. Our wedding day, our first home, our laughter, all dissolving into ash. He scrolled through his phone the entire time, his thumb gliding casually across the screen. Not once did he look at me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers, but I couldn't. The silence felt heavier than words could ever be. When we finally pulled into the driveway, he pocketed his phone and said, without looking at me, "We'll talk in the morning." Then he got out, leaving me there, still in my seat, still wearing the ring that no longer meant anything. I watched him walk inside, his figure swallowed by the darkness of our home, and I realized my marriage had ended long before that dinner. That night only made it official. When I woke up, the other side of the bed was cold. His pillow was untouched. The first thing I heard was silence. That kind of heavy, deliberate silence that feels like punishment. No footsteps, no humming from the kitchen, not even the faint sound of his car in the driveway. It was like the house had exhaled overnight and emptied itself of him. I sat there for a long time, staring at the dent in the sheets where he used to sleep. My wedding ring pressed into my palm, leaving a faint mark when I clenched my fist. Part of me expected a note. Something, an apology, an explanation, anything. But there was nothing, just the faint smell of his cologne in the air. And the echo of last night's humiliation still clawing through my mind. I dragged myself out of bed, my body moving like it belonged to someone else. Downstairs, the morning light filtered through the blinds, cutting the room into sharp slices of gold and shadow. His coffee mug sat on the counter, empty, rinsed, as if he'd cleaned up before walking out of our life. I remember whispering to myself, maybe he just needed space, but even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Then I noticed his study door, slightly ajar. He'd always been territorial about that room. "Work stuff," he'd say whenever I got too close. The kind of tone that told me not to ask questions. But this time, something in me didn't care anymore. I pushed the door open. The air inside was stale, like it hadn't been aired out in weeks. Papers everywhere, neatly stacked, but too many of them. His desk, the one we picked out together from that vintage shop, was covered in folders, and on top, my name. At first I thought I'd imagined it, but no. There it was, in black ink across several manila envelopes, Clara Hastings. My heart started to race. I sat down and opened the first folder. Inside were bank statements, our joint accounts, except the balances were wrong. They were lower, much lower. I flipped through page after page, the numbers dwindling. My hand trembled as I turned another sheet. Wire transfers, multiple, to an account name I didn't recognize. Sophia Reynolds. It hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. I dropped the paper, my vision swimming. For a second I thought maybe I was still dreaming, still trapped in that nightmare from the restaurant. But this was worse, because betrayal of the heart can be forgiven. But this was theft. I opened another folder. More documents. Property deeds. One of them was for our home, the house we'd spent 2 years renovating together, the one I'd poured every piece of myself into. Except it didn't have both our names anymore. It had mine, crossed out. In its place was hers. Sophia. I whispered her name like it burned my tongue. No, that can't be right. My eyes darted to the signatures. His was there, clean, confident, familiar, and next to it, mine, except it wasn't. The handwriting was close, eerily close, but not mine. The loops in the letters were too precise, too mechanical. He'd forged my signature. I felt my whole body go cold. I could hear my own breath quicken, the paper crinkling between my fingers. He didn't just cheat, I whispered. He stole. Every memory of the past year began to twist, reshaping itself into something I hadn't seen before. The late nights at his office, the rushed explanations, the sudden urgency to update our will, our assets, our investments, things I'd trusted him with because I thought we were a team. He'd been planning this. Every smile, every apology, every I love you had been part of the performance. My knees gave out and I sank to the floor, surrounded by papers, the debris of a life I no longer recognized. I picked up one of the documents again, scanning it over and over, hoping I was wrong. But there it was, the notary's stamp, the date. Everything official, everything legal, and all of it a lie. I could still hear his voice from last night. You never would have let go otherwise. No, I wouldn't have. Not just because I loved him, but because he was erasing me piece by piece while I was too blind to see it happening. I stumbled to my feet, my chest heaving. My reflection in the study window looked foreign, pale, hollow-eyed, trembling. I whispered to that reflection, "Who are you now?" Then I saw his pen lying on the desk, the same pen he used to sign our wedding vows. Gold trim, engraved with his initials, RM. That tiny detail broke something inside me. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my messages, desperate for something to hold on to. A text, a clue, anything that made sense. But the last message from him was from 2 days ago. Don't wait up tonight. Late meeting. Right, with her. My hand shook as I opened my camera roll. Photos from last week, smiling, laughing, holding hands in front of that house. Our house, except it wasn't ours anymore. I felt dizzy. I sat down again, papers still scattered around me like fallen snow. The sound of the clock ticking on the wall was deafening. Each tick felt like a countdown. Each second, a reminder that the person I'd trusted most had turned my life into a transaction. For a moment, I just shut down. My body went numb, my mind blank. Then something inside me sparked, quiet but unmistakable. A pulse of anger under the grief. I looked at the documents again, forcing myself to study them, to see not the heartbreak, but the evidence, the withdrawals, the forged signatures, the property transfer. He'd built an entire life behind my back and legally erased me from the one we'd built together. I could almost hear his voice, smooth and confident. You never would have let go otherwise. No, I wouldn't have let go. But now I wouldn't let him win. I gathered every document into a pile, flattening the pages with shaking hands. Then I took out my phone and started taking pictures. Every signature, every date, every transaction. My tears had stopped. My hands were steady now. He thought I'd crumble quietly. He thought humiliation would break me, that I'd walk away too ashamed to fight back. But he underestimated the woman he built his empire on. I whispered into the empty room, "You made one mistake, Richard. You taught me how to fight for you. Now I'll fight against you." The sound of my own voice startled me. It didn't sound weak anymore. It sounded certain. I shoved the files into my bag, zipped it shut, and looked around the office one last time, the place where he'd built his lies. Then I turned off the light and closed the door. The house felt colder now, heavier, but no longer suffocating, because I'd made a decision. I wouldn't leave quietly. Not anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the living room with the stack of documents spread around me like evidence from a crime scene. My crime was love, and the punishment was annihilation. The sky outside slowly turned gray, then pale gold, and with the first light of morning came a strange calm. Not peace exactly, but something colder. Purpose. By 9, I was sitting in a lawyer's office downtown. The receptionist smiled politely when she asked for my name, but when I gave it, something flickered across her face. She excused herself and whispered something to the man behind the counter. A bad feeling coiled in my stomach. When the lawyer, a soft-spoken man named Lewis, finally called me in, his expression was cautious, almost apologetic. "Mrs. Hastings," he began, adjusting his glasses, "before we start, I need to inform you that your husband has already filed a legal motion against you." I blinked. "A motion? For what?" He hesitated. "A restraining order." The air went out of the room. "A what?" Lewis slid a file across the desk. "Filed this morning at 8:47. It alleges that you've been emotionally volatile, threatening, and physically aggressive toward him." I felt my jaw drop. "That's insane. I haven't even seen him since last night." He nodded slowly. "I understand this is difficult to hear, but it's a preemptive tactic. It's not uncommon in cases like this." "Cases like what?" "Marital fraud, financial disputes. One party files first to control the narrative." I shook my head in disbelief. "He's lying. He forged my signature, stole from me, humiliated me publicly." Lewis raised a hand gently. "And now he's painting you as unstable. It gives him leverage, especially if there's an investigation." My heart pounded. "An investigation?" He sighed. "He's already submitted witness statements." "Witness? Who?" He opened the folder. My eyes landed on familiar names. Anna Moore, Greg Stevens. My voice broke. "Our friends?" Lewis nodded. "Both claim they've seen you lash out at your husband. One statement says you threw a glass during an argument. That's a lie," I said, my voice rising. "He threw the glass. I never touched him." Lewis' gaze softened. "I believe you. But the paper trail is already being built." I pressed my hands to my face, trying to breathe. "He's setting me up. He's actually God. He's thought of everything." For a moment, the only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. I stared at the neat rows of files on Lewis's shelf, thinking how methodical it all looked. Just like Richard. Lewis leaned forward. "Mrs. Hastings, if you're serious about fighting this, you'll need evidence. Financial records, communications, anything that shows a pattern of manipulation or deceit." "I have the documents," I said quickly. "The bank transfers, the forged signatures, I took pictures." He nodded. "Good, that's a start. But I'll be honest, he's well connected. This could get ugly." I met his eyes. "It's already ugly." When I left his office, I could feel the world tilting. Every face on the street looked suspicious, every sound too loud. The city moved on as if nothing had happened, but I felt like I was walking through smoke. By the time I reached my car, I was shaking. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, whispering, "He's turning everyone against me." And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister. It rang twice before she answered, her voice cautious. "Clara?" I swallowed hard. "Hey, Mia," a long pause. Then, "Wow, didn't think I'd ever hear from you again." "I know," I said softly. "I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't serious." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "Serious like last time? Or worse?" "Worse," I whispered. Silence. Then her tone shifted, not kind but less guarded. "Where are you?" "Downtown, near Elm Street. I'm at work. Meet me at the cafe across from the courthouse in 30 minutes. When I hung up, my hands were trembling again. Mia and I hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since the fight after Dad's funeral. She'd accused me of being controlling. I'd accused her of being selfish. And just like that, we'd cut each other out of our lives. But family has a way of resurfacing when everything else burns. When I walked into the cafe, she was already there, sitting in the corner, tapping her nails against her coffee cup. Her hair was shorter now, her face sharper, but her eyes, those same gray-blue eyes as mine, still carried that mix of suspicion and warmth. She looked up. "You look terrible." "Nice to see you too," I said, managing a weak smile. She motioned for me to sit. "All right, start talking." So I did. Every word came out like a confession. The affair, the restaurant, the papers, the forged signature, the restraining order. By the time I finished, Mia just sat there, staring at me, her mouth slightly open. Jesus, she whispered. He's not just a narcissist. He's a predator, I nodded. I should have seen it. I ignored everything. Mia leaned back, arms crossed. You always wanted to believe the best in people, even when it killed you. I looked down at my coffee, whispering, You always thought that made me weak. She hesitated. Then softly, No, I thought it made you human. For a second, neither of us said anything. The air between us felt fragile, full of all the words we hadn't said in years. Finally, she sighed. I work for a family law firm now, paralegal. I've seen guys like him before. They charm everyone until the mask slips. And when it does, they destroy everything to keep control. I met her eyes. So what do? She leaned in. You fight back. You document everything. And you stop playing by his rules. Mia, he's got lawyers, money, friends. And you've got me, she said, cutting me off. That simple statement hit me harder than I expected. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I blinked them back. You sure? I whispered. After everything between us? She gave a half smile. You're still my sister. And he messed with the wrong family, I laughed softly, a broken, surprised laugh. You haven't changed. Neither have you, she said. Still picking disasters in expensive suits. Low blow, true one. We both smiled. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a flicker of something warm in my chest. Mia reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Listen to me. He took everything from you. Your money, your trust, your name. Don't let him take your voice too. I nodded slowly, gripping her hand back. Her eyes narrowed, fierce and steady. He built his life on your silence. So we're done being quiet. I took a deep breath. What do we do first? She smirked. We build our own case. We prove he forged your signature. We track every cent. And we make him choke on his lies. The cafe around us buzzed with quiet chatter, but it felt like the world had gone still, like the two of us were standing at the edge of something vast and dangerous. Mia leaned closer, her voice low but certain. He took everything from you. Let's take it back. And in that moment, for the first time since the night of the toast, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Power. It started with silence. The kind that doesn't feel empty. It feels planned, calculated. For a few days after meeting with Mia, I tried to breathe again. We spent nights combing through my documents, cross-checking signatures, piecing together timelines. I told myself that if I stayed focused, I could survive this. But then, little by little, things began to crumble, not by accident, but by design. The first email came on a Monday morning. Subject line, Contract termination notice, Merton Interiors. I frowned. Merton had been one of my biggest design clients for 3 years. I clicked open the message. Clara, we regret to inform you that due to your recent behavioral concerns and unreliable communication, we will be discontinuing your services effective immediately. Please consider this formal notice. Merton Group, my hands went cold. Behavioral concerns? I called instantly. The receptionist put me on hold for a minute before the manager picked up. Mr. Daniels, hi. It's Clara Hastings. I just received your email. He cut me off, his tone tight. Clara, please. We've already discussed this with your husband. He told us about the situation. What situation? I said, my voice trembling. The one regarding your emotional state. He assured us you'd be stepping back for your own health. I froze. He said what? I'm sorry, but we can't risk further association. It's best for both parties. And then, click. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, heartbeat thudding like a drum. That was just the beginning. Within a week, 3 more clients canceled. Some emails looked legitimate, others didn't. Mia examined them and confirmed what I feared. The addresses were fakes, spoofed to look real. He's creating a digital smear campaign, she said, her jaw tight. He's using your contacts against you. I buried my face in my hands. He's destroying everything I built. Mia grabbed my wrist. Then we document every piece of it. Every fake email, every account. He wants chaos? We'll give him evidence. But it didn't stop there. That Thursday, I opened Instagram and saw something that made my stomach twist. Sophia, smiling in a photo, standing in front of the same villa Richard and I had once vacationed in. Her caption read, "When love finds you, it feels effortless," and on her wrist, my bracelet. Gold with the small diamond infinity clasp Richard had given me for our 5th anniversary. I zoomed in just to be sure. Same design, same engraving on the inside, C+R forever. The comments below were brutal. "You're glowing, Sophia. So happy you found someone who treats you right." She's the crazy ex, isn't she? I dropped my phone. It clattered onto the floor, screen lighting up with new notifications. DMs, tags, people sending me screenshots of posts, memes mocking me, threads calling me toxic, unstable, the ex who can't let go. He wasn't just ruining my business. He was erasing my identity. When I confronted one of our mutual friends, Karen, over the phone, she sighed heavily. "Clara, I don't want to take sides." "He's lying, Karen. He forged my signature. Stole my money. Then why does he have screenshots of you threatening him?" "What?" "He showed us text where you said you'd make him pay." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "That's not real. I never wrote that." Karen's voice softened, but the damage was done. "I just hope you get help, Clara." Click. I stood there, phone against my ear, staring at the reflection of myself in the mirror. Hair unbrushed, eyes red. A woman unraveling. That's when Mia walked in, holding a stack of printed documents. "You need to see this." I turned to her, my voice hollow. "Another email?" "Worse." She dropped the papers on the table. "He leaked your private messages." I skimmed the pages. Screenshots of conversations, taken out of context, twisted. My words from years ago, edited, rearranged. He'd made it look like I'd been paranoid, obsessive, like I had been the abuser. Tears blurred my vision. "He's winning, Mia. He's making me look insane." She shook her head fiercely. "No, he's overplaying his hand. The more noise he makes, the more mistakes he'll make." I wanted to believe her, but every day felt heavier than the last. Clients gone, friends gone. My reputation shredded in public. Even leaving the house made me feel exposed, like everyone was whispering behind my back. At night, I'd lie awake, scrolling through his and Sophia's posts. She'd wear my jewelry, pose in my favorite restaurant, even used captions Richard and I had once joked about. Each photo felt like another stab, another reminder that he hadn't just replaced me, he was replicating me. One night, I threw my phone across the room and screamed. Mia ran in. "What happened?" I pointed at the screen. "He's posting our wedding song lyrics on her photos, Mia. He's using our memories." She picked up the phone, her face darkening. "He's not in love with her. He's obsessed with controlling you. Even now," I sank onto the couch, shaking. "He's going to destroy me completely." Mia crouched down in front of me. "Then we destroy his lies first." But I could see the worry in her eyes. She was strong, but she knew we were fighting a monster with resources, charm, and a head start. 2 days later, she called me at midnight. Her voice was trembling, but this time not from fear. "Clara, you need to come over, now." When I arrived, she had her laptop open, headphones on. "What is it?" I asked, heart pounding. She hit play. The audio crackled for a few seconds. Then a voice filled the room, smooth, confident, unmistakably his Richard. "Yeah, of course she signed it. She always signs whatever I put in front of her. Poor thing thinks she's clever, but she's the easiest mark I ever had. Wife number 1 didn't even see it coming." My stomach dropped. The recording continued. His tone smug, arrogant, drunk with power. I told Sophia, "All it takes is a little charm, a few fake documents, and boom, everything's mine." She's too emotional to think clearly. "Makes it easy." Mia paused it, looking at me. This was on a voice memo one of his friends accidentally uploaded to a shared drive. I pulled it before he deleted it. I stared at the screen, numb. He admitted everything. "Yes," she said, leaning forward. "Forgery, manipulation, intent. It's all here." I pressed a hand over my mouth, tears flooding my eyes. But this time they weren't from pain. For weeks, I'd felt powerless. But now, for the first time, I could feel the scales shift. Mia's voice was quiet, steady. He's been building a story, but we just found the truth. I looked at her, trembling but resolute. We're going to use this, aren't we? Absolutely, she said. We'll make him choke on his own confession. I closed my eyes, listening again to his laughter on the recording, that smug, a confident tone that had once made me feel safe. Now it made my skin crawl. He thinks he's untouchable, I whispered. Mia nodded. Then let's remind him he's not. The night stretched on, and for the first time in months, I felt a strange, electric kind of peace. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness, but the kind that comes before war. I stared out the window, the city lights reflecting off the glass like fire. He took my money, my name, my dignity, I said quietly. But he just gave me something he can't take back. Mia looked up. What's that? Proof. For a brief moment, I thought the nightmare was ending. Mia and I had the recording. Proof of everything, his arrogance, his fraud, his cruelty. I could almost taste freedom. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. But peace never lasts long when you're dealing with someone like Richard. It began the next morning. I tried to log into my business account to pay an invoice, and the password failed. I tried again, then again. Access denied, I frowned. That's strange. I opened my email. Another message popped up. Notice of account freeze due to pending legal investigation. I felt my throat close. I refreshed again. Then I checked my personal account. Also frozen. Mia, I said, dialing her immediately. Something's wrong with my accounts. She picked up on the second ring. What happened? They're frozen. All of them. It says there's an ongoing investigation. She cursed under her breath. He's filed a claim, hasn't he? Fraud or misappropriation? I don't know, I snapped. How can he even do that? He's the one who... That's how. He's trying to flip the narrative before you can. I could hear her typing furiously in the background. Okay, I'll look into it. Don't panic. He's desperate. That recording scared him, but I was already spiraling. I could feel it. That dizzy, suffocating panic rising again. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ms. Hastings, this is the property manager for your studio. Unfortunately, your lease has been terminated due to non-payment. You have until the end of the week to vacate. What? That's impossible. I'm sorry, but your payment bounced. I almost laughed. Bounced? He'd frozen the account. When I hung up, I stared at the half-finished sketches spread across my desk. Blueprints, color palettes, project notes. My world, my identity. By Friday, I was locked out, literally, a new padlock on the door. My name scraped off the frosted glass. A paper taped to the wall. Lease terminated. I stood on the sidewalk, rain dripping from the awning, my reflection blurry in the window. That's when my phone rang again. Mia. I just got a warning, she said, her voice trembling. My supervisor called me in. They said someone reported that I'm interfering in a private legal case. If I don't back off, they'll suspend me. My heart sank. He's threatening you now? He's threatening my job, Clara. She paused, voice breaking. I don't care about me, but if I lose access to the firm's systems, I can't help you anymore. I leaned against the wall, pressing a hand over my face. He's cutting off every way out, she exhaled shakily. He's panicking. That means he's close to slipping up. But you need to stay safe, okay? Don't be alone tonight. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. That night, I drove to a small roadside motel on the edge of town. One of those dim, tired places that smelled faintly of cigarettes and disinfectant. The walls were thin. The lights buzzed. The bed sagged in the middle. I put my suitcase down, the only one I'd managed to pack before leaving the house I'd once called mine. As I sat on the edge of the bed, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My reflection looked older, hollowed out, eyes ringed with exhaustion. How did it come to this? A year ago, I had a thriving studio, a home filled with laughter, friends who trusted me. Now I had a single room and the sound of cars rushing by outside. I pulled out my phone. No missed calls, no messages, just silence. Then, around midnight, my voicemail pinged. One new message. I hesitated before pressing play. Clara. His voice. Smooth, calm, the kind of tone he used to use when apologizing before twisting the knife. "You should have stayed quiet," he said. "You're embarrassing yourself. Do you really think anyone believes you? I froze the accounts to protect what's mine. You'll thank me one day for saving you from yourself." There was a short pause, then a chuckle. "Oh, and tell your little sister to watch her step. She's playing in waters she doesn't understand. Beep?" The silence that followed was deafening. I dropped the phone onto the bed and just sat there, staring at the wall, the humiliation, the exhaustion, the hopelessness. It all crashed over me at once. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed. Not the kind of sob that feels cathartic, but the kind that shakes your bones. The kind that feels like the end. I cried for everything I'd lost. For the woman I used to be. For the studio, the friends, the home that wasn't home anymore. I cried until my voice was gone. When the tears finally stopped, I felt empty. Completely hollow. I looked around the room, the peeling wallpaper, the faint hum of the vending machine outside, and whispered, "He won." But even as I said it, something inside me refused to believe it, because beneath all that grief, a different kind of feeling was starting to rise. Not sadness, not fear. Anger. Slow, simmering anger that burned through the fog of helplessness. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and picked up my phone again. I replayed the voicemail, listening to every word, every smug pause. "You should have stayed quiet." He still thought he could control me with fear. That was his mistake. I sat up straighter, staring at the mirror again. My reflection looked the same, tired, fragile, but something in my eyes had changed. He thought he'd taken everything from me. He thought freezing my accounts, locking me out, turning people against me, would break me, but he didn't understand. When you've already lost everything, you stop being afraid of losing more. I whispered to the reflection. He underestimates me again. I opened my laptop, the only thing I had left. The battery was low, the Wi-Fi slow, but I began writing. Notes, timelines, evidence. Mia's warning echoed in my mind. But so did her voice from that night with the recording, "He's not untouchable." I would prove it. Even if I had to crawl through the ashes of what he'd done, I would make sure he faced everything he'd inflicted, not just on me, but on everyone he used. Everyone he lied to. Outside, the rain had stopped. The neon sign flickered against the wet pavement, casting faint red light across the room. I took a deep breath, steady and deliberate, and hit record on my phone's voice memo app. "My name is Clara Hastings," I whispered, and this is how he tried to erase me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt dangerous. When the sun rose the next morning, I hadn't slept. I just sat there, hunched over the motel desk, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and wrinkled papers. My laptop hummed weakly, the cursor blinking on an empty page titled, "The Truth." Mia called just after 7. Her voice was tired, cautious. "Are you okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I'm done being scared." There was silence on the other end, then a small, proud sigh. "Good, because I found something." That got my attention. "What do you mean?" "I traced one of the shell companies he used to transfer funds from your joint account. It's registered under an alias, but the digital signature matches his assistant's credentials. That's fraud, Clara. Real, provable fraud." For the first time in days, I felt something close to hope. "Can we use that?" "We can, if we get more. We'll need to prove the pattern. The money trail, the documents, the communications, everything." I rubbed my temples. "That's a lot, I know. But we're going to do this right. No shortcuts." That was the moment the switch flipped inside me, from victim to strategist. I checked out of the motel that afternoon and met Mia at her apartment. She opened the door before I could even knock. "You look like hell," she said. "Thanks," I muttered, stepping in. Her living room was buried in files and open laptops. Sticky notes plastered across the coffee table, dates, amounts, initials. She'd already started building a war room. We sat on the floor, cross-legged, surrounded by chaos. "Okay," she said, pulling out a binder. Here's how we'll do it. We start from the beginning. Every email, every bank statement, every text he's ever sent you. We map it out. Connect the dots. If he used fake names or offshore transfers, we'll find the link. I blinked at the sheer magnitude of it. That could take weeks, she nodded. Then we'll work nights. You up for it? I met her eyes. Completely. And so began the longest nights of my life. The hours blurred together. The rhythmic tapping of keyboards. The rustle of papers. The bitter smell of coffee that never seemed to cool. We worked like detectives in some slow, silent thriller. Mia would whisper, "Wait. Look at this. This email from April. He said the funds were moved for business consolidation. But the same day, there's a withdrawal for a luxury villa lease." I leaned over her shoulder. "That's not consolidation. That's hiding assets," she smirked. "Exactly." Each new discovery made the fatigue fade a little more. Every deceit we uncovered gave me back a piece of power he'd stolen. At one point, Mia leaned back, eyes scanning the wall of notes. "We're getting somewhere, Clara, but we'll need someone who knows how to make this airtight. Someone who's handled this level of deception before." I frowned. "You mean a lawyer? More like a shadow lawyer," she said, half grinning. "I know someone. A private investigator. Used to work corporate fraud before he quit the firm. He's not cheap, but he's good." I hesitated. "Can we trust him?" "He doesn't work for people like Richard." "That's all you need to know." A few days later, I met him. His name was Eli Carter, late 40s, quiet eyes that missed nothing. He showed up in jeans, holding a plain folder, and spoke in clipped, efficient sentences. "So," he said after I explained everything, "you want to take down a man who knows the system better than most lawyers?" "Yes," I said simply. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Then we'll do it by the book, slowly, quietly. You make noise only when you're ready to strike." He opened his folder and began marking points on a sheet of paper. "We start with proof of intent. You'll need him admitting to manipulation or misuse. In his own words." I swallowed. "You mean record him?" Eli nodded once. "You get him talking. Let him think he's still in control. The moment he lets his mask slip, that's your weapon." I glanced at Mia, who gave a small, nervous smile. "You can do this," she said. "You've always known how to make him talk." The idea terrified me, but she was right. That evening, I sat alone in my car outside Richard's new office, the one I used to help design, ironically. The place looked cold now, sterile, like him. My phone trembled in my hand as I hit record. When he finally answered, his voice oozed that same smug calm. "Clara, to what do I owe this honor?" "I want to end this," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "No lawyers, no police. Just a conversation. Convenient." "For who?" "For both of us," I lied. "Meet me at the cafe near our old studio." 10 minutes, he agreed, too easily. That should have been my first warning. When he arrived, he looked polished as ever, tailored suit, practiced smile. He slid into the chair across from me like we were old friends. "So," he said, "what's this about?" I forced myself to meet his gaze. "I just need to understand why. You had everything, Richard. The company, the money, the control. Why keep hurting me?" He chuckled. "Hurt you? Don't be dramatic, Clara. You benefited too." "Benefited?" I asked softly. "From what, being erased?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You were always too sentimental. This was business. You were a legal convenience." The words hit me like a slap, but I kept my face still. I tilted my head, pretending to think. "A legal convenience," I repeated. He smirked. "Don't look so shocked. That's what marriages are, really. Strategic partnerships. You just didn't play your part long enough." He laughed, that awful, dismissive laugh, and checked his watch. "I'd love to stay and philosophize, but some of us have real companies to run." I smiled faintly. "Of course. I'll see you soon." He left, his cologne lingering in the air long after he was gone. I sat there for a moment, breathing through the adrenaline, then looked down at my phone. The red recording light blinked steadily. Got it. Every word. When I met Mia and Eli later that night, I played the recording. Richard's voice filled the small room, calm, cruel, incriminating. Eli looked up at me when it ended. That's intent and character. Combine it with the financial trail. He's finished. Mia grinned, eyes shining with relief. You did it, Clara. I shook my head. We did it. For a long moment, none of us said anything. The only sound was the steady hum of Eli's recorder as he backed up the files. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. He thought I'd never fight back. That I'd stay quiet, humiliated, broken. Eli packed up the evidence. He underestimated you. I smiled, small, sharp, certain. He always does. I looked at the piles of papers spread across the table, the evidence of his lies, his manipulation, his greed, and felt something inside me click into place. This isn't just about revenge, I said quietly. It's about taking back everything he tried to erase. Mia reached over, resting a hand on mine. Then let's finish it. I stood, staring out the window at the city lights. My reflection stared back, tired. Yes, but unbroken. I turned to them both and said the words I'd been waiting to say for months. Let's take this to court. The morning of the trial felt unreal. The city outside the courthouse pulsed with noise, reporters shouting, camera shutters snapping like gunfire, the heavy thud of boots echoing across marble steps. I stood at the base of those steps, hands trembling slightly, my reflection flickering in the glass doors ahead. For a moment, I almost turned around, but then I remembered his voicemail. You should have stayed quiet. I wasn't quiet anymore. Mia touched my shoulder. You ready? I nodded. As I'll ever be. When we pushed through the doors, the world seemed to narrow to a single hallway, cool, sterile, buzzing with fluorescent lights. And then I saw him, Richard, tailored navy suit, gold cufflinks glinting under the lights. A soft smirk curved on his lips, as if this entire thing were a mild inconvenience, a business meeting he'd already won. Sophia was beside him, draped in beige silk, her manicured hand looped through his arm. Reporters swarmed them immediately. Richard, any comments on the allegations? He smiled like a man in full control. It's unfortunate. My ex-wife's been struggling with reality for a while. I just want her to get the help she needs. The crowd murmured, cameras clicked, and for a second I thought I'd faint. But Mia stepped forward, blocking my path just long enough for me to steady myself. Let him talk, she whispered. He's digging his own grave. Inside. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Rows of benches. A high oak bench where the judge would preside. The faint smell of old paper and polished wood. I sat down at the plaintiff's table. My palms were slick. Across from me, Richard leaned back casually, whispering something to his attorney, a sleek woman with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes. When the bailiff called order, every sound seemed amplified. The gavel strike, the shuffle of chairs, the faint click of Sophia's heels as she crossed her legs behind him. The judge, a calm, silver-haired woman named Judge Hanley, glanced over the files before her. We're here today to review the claims of financial misconduct, emotional distress, and falsified evidence in the matter of Clara Morgan versus Richard Graves. My heartbeat drowned out everything else. Richard's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, the defense maintains that these allegations are baseless. My client has been the victim of harassment and slander by his former spouse, who has demonstrated repeated instability and irrational behavior. She turned slightly, giving me that fake, pitying look. We have documented incidents of erratic messages, confrontations, and even attempts to interfere with my client's business. I wanted to scream. To stand up and shout you forged everything. But Mia placed a hand on my arm under the table. A silent reminder. Wait. The defense called their first witness, one of Richard's former friends, a man I'd once trusted. He cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. I saw Clara at his office once. She was yelling, really upset. Richard told me she'd been sending strange emails. I didn't know what to think. I could barely breathe. Then Sophia was called. She stood, the picture of composure, hand delicately on the Bible as she swore to tell the truth. Miss Lane, the lawyer said, you were present when several incidents occurred, correct? Yes, Sophia said softly. Clara seemed unwell. She'd call late at night, leave threatening messages. Richard was heartbroken. He just wanted peace. Mia's grip on my wrist tightened. "It's fine," she whispered. "Let them finish." The courtroom blurred around me, voices blending into static. Every lie piled higher, every accusation sharper. When it was finally my turn to testify, my throat felt dry as dust. "Mrs. Morgan," the judge said gently, "you may speak." I stood, fingers trembling slightly as I adjusted the microphone. "Your Honor," I began, my voice soft but steady. "For months, I was gaslit, isolated, and stripped of everything I built. My business, my savings, even my name, all taken by the man sitting across from me." Richard's lawyer interrupted. "Objection. Emotional manipulation." "Overruled," Judge Hanley said without looking up. "Continue." I looked directly at Richard. He smiled faintly as if amused. "He made me believe I was losing my mind," I continued. "He falsified emails, staged witness statements, convinced people I was dangerous, all while draining our joint accounts into shell companies." I paused. "And I can prove it." That wiped the smirk off his face. Mia stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to present Exhibit C through G, authenticated bank transfers, signed under aliases linked to the defendant's company accounts." The clerk distributed copies. The judge examined them quietly. Richard's lawyer scoffed. "Easily fabricated." Mia didn't flinch. "Then let's go deeper." She clicked the remote, and a screen lit up beside the judge's bench. "We also have a digital forensic report from independent investigator Eli Carter, confirming IP addresses tied to the defendant's residence during the creation of these transfers." The courtroom stirred. Richard's expression hardened. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering something through clenched teeth. The defense quickly tried to recover. "Your Honor, this still doesn't prove intent. At best, it's circumstantial." Judge Hanley leaned back, studying us. "Do you have direct evidence of intent, Ms. Morgan?" Mia glanced at me. My heart pounded. This was it. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "We do." She plugged in a small USB drive. The screen flickered again. "Audio recording," Mia said. "Dated 3 weeks ago," the judge nodded. "Proceed." The room went still as my voice filled the air, nervous, tight. Why keep hurting me? Then Richard's voice, calm and cruel. "Hurt you? Don't be dramatic, Clara. You benefited too." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The recording continued. "You were always too sentimental. This was business. You were a legal convenience." Sophia's head snapped toward him. Her face drained of color. He shifted in his seat, eyes narrowing. "This is out of context," he muttered. But it was too late. The judge raised a hand. Silence. The last part of the recording played, his laugh, cold and arrogant. "That's what marriages are, really. Strategic partnerships. You just didn't play your part long enough." When the audio stopped, you could hear the hum of the ceiling lights. No one moved. Judge Hanley folded her hands. "I've heard enough." Richard's lawyer started to object again, but the judge cut her off. "Don't," she turned to Richard. "Mr. Graves, this recording, along with the corroborating financial evidence, clearly establishes a pattern of deceit, exploitation, and calculated manipulation. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Clara Morgan." The gavel struck once, a sharp, echoing sound that seemed to shake the floor beneath me. The courtroom erupted. Reporters surged forward, people whispering, chairs scraping. Richard's lawyer looked stunned. Sophia simply stared at him like she'd never seen him before. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Everything she said?" He turned to her, face twisted. "You wouldn't understand." She backed away slowly, shaking her head. "No, Richard. I think I finally do." The bailiff stepped forward to restore order. Cameras flashed again, but this time they were pointed at me, not in pity, but in awe. Mia leaned close, whispering, "We did it." I nodded, still numb. We really did. Outside, the air felt different, crisp, almost clean. The press tried to swarm, shouting questions, but I barely heard them. One reporter called out, "Clara, any words for your ex-husband?" I paused at the top of the courthouse steps, the city roaring beneath me. "Yes," I said softly. "Never underestimate the quiet ones." I turned to Mia, who was grinning through tears. We walked down the steps together as the flashes went off, each one a spark of freedom. of closure. Somewhere behind us, I heard Richard yelling, his voice drowned by the noise, the chaos, the sound of justice finally catching up to him, and for the first time in years, I felt weightless. That night, I lay awake, not from fear, but from the overwhelming stillness that comes after surviving a storm. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was peace. The house felt different when I stepped inside again. It was quiet, not the suffocating silence of before, but a peaceful kind. The kind that hums softly, like air finally released after years of holding your breath. The furniture was gone. Boxes still lined the hallway. Dust floated through the golden morning light, catching on the air like tiny ghosts of the life I'd lost and somehow found again. I traced my fingers over the edge of the doorway where a faint pencil mark still showed. Our mark. We'd written it years ago when we first moved in, measuring how high we could reach, laughing like kids. Now I could barely remember the sound of that laughter. Still, I whispered to the empty air, "I'm home." It didn't echo. It just settled. Mia arrived a few minutes later, balancing coffee cups in one hand and a thick folder in the other. "Final property transfer. The house is officially yours again," she said, setting it on the counter. I smiled. "For real this time?" "For real." We stood in the kitchen for a long moment, the same kitchen where I'd once found his hidden phone, where I'd cried into cold coffee, where I'd convinced myself it was all in my head. Now it was just sunlight, quiet and possibility. I opened the window. A soft breeze drifted in. The world smelled like rain and jasmine and new beginnings. Mia watched me for a beat, then grinned. "So what's next? You going to rebuild your empire?" I laughed under my breath. "Not an empire, just my life." That night I sat at my old desk, the one that had been dragged out of storage, its wood still scratched and scarred from years of use. My laptop flickered on, and the blank screen felt like a clean slate. One email at a time, I started writing to former clients. Not excuses, explanations, truths. Some replied within hours. Others didn't. But the ones who did said the same thing. "We're glad you're back." It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming something he'd tried to erase. My name, my reputation, my sense of self. Days turned into weeks. I rebuilt my design studio from my living room. I painted the walls white, hung up sketches of ideas I'd abandoned, and kept a single photograph on my desk. Me and Mia, on the courthouse steps. Laughing through tears, therapy became my anchor. The first session, I barely spoke. The therapist just smiled softly and said, "You don't have to rush healing. You just have to stop blaming yourself." And she was right. Healing wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was slow mornings and deep breaths and forgiving myself for not leaving sooner. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. A headline notification. Sophia Lane files fraud suit against ex-partner Richard Graves. I froze. The accompanying photo showed her walking out of the courthouse, sunglasses on, reporters swarming. Her statement read, "I believed his lies too. I won't stay silent anymore." For the first time, I didn't feel anger toward her. Just a strange sense of solidarity. Two women burned by the same fire, finally stepping into the light. Later that evening, I met Mia at a small cafe near the river. She raised her cup. "To justice," I smiled. "To truth." We clinked glasses, and I realized how far we'd come, from estranged sisters drowning in resentment to allies who refused to stay broken. "You know," she said, leaning back, "I think Mom would have been proud." The words hit deep. "Yeah," I whispered. "Maybe she would have." The sky outside shifted from orange to violet, city lights flickering on one by one. "Are you ever going to see him again?" Mia asked quietly. I shook my head. "He doesn't exist anymore. Not in my story." That night, I drove home with the windows down, music playing softly, the city lights blurring past like streaks of forgiveness. When I parked in front of the house, I sat there for a moment, staring at the reflection in the rearview mirror. My own face looked different, not just older or stronger, but freer. I went inside, made tea, and curled up by the window. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. There was a time when rain made me feel lonely. Now, it felt like cleansing. I opened my journal, the one I used to fill with questions and confusion, and wrote a single sentence. He tried to silence me with lies. I answered with truth. For the first time, that truth didn't sting. It steadied me, because survival wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming your voice after someone tried to take it. As the rain whispered against the glass, I thought about every woman who might be watching this, sitting in a dark room, doubting her own mind because someone made her believe she was too emotional or unstable. If that's you, listen carefully. You are not crazy. You are being conditioned to doubt yourself. And when you stop believing their story, when you start telling your own, that's when everything changes. I looked around the quiet house, at the boxes still waiting to be unpacked, at the framed sketches on the floor. My life wasn't perfect. It wasn't even fully rebuilt, but it was mine again, and that was enough. I took one last deep breath, smiled faintly, and spoke directly, not to anyone in the room, but to whoever was listening beyond the screen. What would you do in my place? The question hung in the air, intimate, challenging, raw, then softer. If my story meant something to you, share it. Tell someone who needs to hear that they can come back from anything. Like this video, subscribe if you want more stories like mine. And remember, I leaned forward slightly, almost whispering, you're stronger than you think. You just need to remember who you are. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and let the sound of the rain carry me into peace. It was a Sunday morning, the kind of morning that feels too calm, like the world's holding its breath. I was watering the plants by the kitchen window when I heard the mail slot creak. Just one envelope slid through, cream-colored, unmarked, no return address. At first, I thought it was a bill or some leftover legal notice. But when I picked it up, my stomach tightened. There was something familiar about the handwriting. Small, neat, deliberate. I sat at the table, tracing my thumb over the edge. My heart was beating too fast for something so ordinary. For a moment, I thought about throwing it away. I'd promised myself, no more looking back, no more reopening wounds that had already scarred over. But curiosity has a cruel sense of timing. I tore it open. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper, and something heavier that slipped out and landed with a dull clink on the table. My breath caught. It was a ring, Richard's engagement ring. Only now it was cracked straight through the center. The break wasn't clean. It looked jagged, like it had been split in anger. Or maybe grief. I unfolded the letter. The paper smelled faintly of jasmine, Sophia's perfume. I didn't need a signature to know who it was from. Her handwriting trembled slightly. The ink blotched in places. He tried to make me you. The first line alone made me freeze. He said you were the reason everything went wrong, but now I understand. He wanted me to be your shadow, to speak like you, dress like you, laugh like you. I became a ghost in someone else's story. The words blurred for a second as my eyes stung. I found your testimony online. I watched it twice. You didn't sound angry. You sounded free. I wanted that. So here's his ring. The same one he gave me. The same one he probably gave you before. I'm sorry. For believing him. For judging you. For not seeing the truth sooner. He's gone. I don't know where. And for the first time, I don't care. Take this as closure, not a reminder. The letter ended there. No signature, no return address. Just silence between the lines. I looked at the broken ring, sitting in the sunlight. The gold glinted faintly, and for a moment, I saw it as it once was, perfect, beautiful, promising. Then the light shifted, and the crack caught it, splitting it into two separate beams. That's when I smiled. A soft, tired smile, the kind that doesn't come from joy, but from peace. He tried to make her me, I whispered, but I'm not the one who broke. I walked over to the window and placed the ring on the sill. Sunlight streamed through it, scattering fractured patterns across the glass. It didn't look broken anymore. It looked refracted, transformed. Outside, the world was bright and loud again, kids laughing, cars passing, birds tracing wild arcs across the sky. I closed my eyes and let the sounds wash over me. For so long, I'd lived inside Richard's shadows, even after he was gone. I carried pieces of his darkness in me, but not anymore. The ring could stay there. Let time and sunlight finish what truth had started. I turned away from the window, picked up my coffee and whispered, half to myself, half to the ghosts still lingering in the corners of memory. Let him keep his ghosts. I'm done living in them. As I walked back into the quiet of my rebuilt home, a single beam of light caught the ring again, scattering gold across the wall like a final farewell. And somewhere between that flicker of light and the fading sound of the rain, I realized something simple and absolute. Betrayal doesn't end you, it introduces you to your strength. Betrayal doesn't end you, it introduces you to your strength. What would you do in my place? If my story touched you, share it. Someone out there might need it more than you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay for the next story, because sometimes the only way out of the dark is through the truth.